Jedediah was a shadow in the sun-baked lands of Arizona. He wasn't mean, just absent. Folks in Dust Devil Gulch whispered about him. Some said a woman with hair like spun gold had left him years ago, taking his laughter with her. Others claimed he'd always been this way, a lone wolf howling at a moon he couldn't reach. His ranch, a patch of stubborn green clinging to the red earth, was his world. Cows grazed, chickens pecked, and Jedediah mended fences, his movements slow and deliberate. His face, etched with lines that told stories of sun and sorrow, rarely broke into a smile. Even his horse, a sturdy paint named Patches, seemed to understand the quiet sadness that clung to Jedediah like dust. He wasn't unfriendly, just distant. He'd nod to folks in town, buy his supplies, and disappear back into the vastness of his ranch. Children would sometimes wave, drawn to the gentle giant, but Jedediah would only offer a small, sad smile in return. The truth was, Jedediah's heart felt like a frozen river. The woman with the spun gold hair had existed. Her name was Alara, and she'd filled his life with sunshine. But a fever had stolen her away, leaving Jedediah with nothing but memories and a heart that refused to thaw. He poured his grief into the land, working until his bones ached, hoping the physical exhaustion would numb the emotional pain. It never quite did. He was a good man, trapped in a cage of his own making, with a lock forged from sorrow. As if Jedediah's world wasn't bleak enough, winter arrived with a vengeance. It wasn't the usual mild Arizona chill. This was a biting, relentless cold that gripped the land in an icy fist. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at the ranch house and piling snowdrifts against the barn doors. The isolation that Jedediah usually embraced became a prison. The road to town was impassable, cutting him off from even the meager human contact he usually had. His cattle huddled together for warmth, their breath misting in the frigid air. Patches, usually eager for a ride, stayed close to the barn, his coat thick with frost. Jedediah spent his days tending to the animals, chopping wood, and trying to keep the fire roaring in the hearth. The silence of the ranch was deafening, broken only by the wind's mournful cry. He found himself thinking of Alara more often, remembering the warmth of her smile and the sound of her laughter. The memories, once a comfort, now felt like shards of glass in his heart. One morning, after a particularly fierce blizzard, Jedediah ventured out to check on the outer fences. The snow was waist-deep in places, and the wind threatened to knock him off his feet. He trudged through the drifts, his face numb with cold, the landscape a blinding white canvas. He felt more alone than ever, a tiny speck against the vast, frozen wilderness. He had no idea that his solitary existence was about to change forever. The wind howled, a mournful cry that echoed Jedediah's own despair. He almost missed it, a glint of something unnatural amidst the snow-covered landscape. It was near the creek bed, usually a rushing torrent in the spring, now a frozen sculpture. He squinted, his eyes struggling to focus in the swirling snow. He moved closer, his boots crunching on the icy crust. The glint resolved itself into a block of ice, impossibly clear and smooth. And inside that ice, frozen in time, was a woman. Her eyes were closed, her face serene. Long, dark hair floated around her head like seaweed in water. She wore a simple dress of some dark material, now shimmering with frost. Jedediah stared, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. Was it a dream? A hallucination brought on by the cold and loneliness? He reached out a gloved hand and touched the ice. It was solid, real. The woman inside was real too, or at least she had been. He could see the delicate curve of her cheek, the gentle slope of her nose. She looked peaceful, like she was merely sleeping. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over Jedediah. Shock, disbelief, and a strange, unsettling curiosity. Who was she? How did she get here? And why was she frozen in a block of ice? He knew one thing for sure. He couldn't leave her there to become another forgotten casualty of the brutal winter. He had to do something. Getting the frozen woman back to the ranch was a monumental task. The block of ice was heavy and awkward, and the snow made every step a struggle. Jedediah considered leaving her, admitting defeat against the elements, but the thought quickly vanished. He couldn't abandon her. He used his lasso to secure the ice block, then slowly, painstakingly, he dragged it across the snow-covered field. Patches, sensing the urgency, nudged the ice with his nose, as if trying to help. It took hours, but finally, Jedediah managed to haul the frozen woman into the barn. The barn was warmer than outside, offering some protection from the wind. Jedediah carefully maneuvered the ice block near the hay bales, away from the direct draft. He knew he couldn't just leave her like that. He had to try and thaw her out, even if he had no idea what he was doing. He started by gathering blankets, piling them around the ice block to insulate it. Then, he lit several lanterns, hoping the gentle heat would slowly melt the ice. He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. As the lanterns flickered, casting dancing shadows on the barn walls, Jedediah sat beside the frozen woman, watching and waiting. He felt a strange sense of responsibility, a connection to this mysterious woman who had appeared in his frozen world. He didn't know her name, her story, or how she had ended up encased in ice. But he knew he couldn't give up on her. He would stay by her side, hoping against hope that he could bring her back to life. Before the ice, before the endless sleep, she was Sarah. She lived in a small village nestled in the mountains, a place where magic was as common as breathing. Her husband, Thomas, was a kind and gentle man, a woodcarver known for his intricate designs. They loved each other deeply, their lives filled with laughter and simple joys. But their happiness was fragile. A dark sorcerer, jealous of Thomas's talent, sought to steal his abilities. When Thomas refused, the sorcerer cursed Sarah, intending to turn her into a statue. However, the curse backfired, freezing her in a block of ice instead. It was meant to be a fate worse than death, an eternity trapped in a frozen prison. The villagers, horrified by what had happened, tried everything to break the curse, but to no avail. They placed Sarah's frozen form near the creek, hoping the flowing water would somehow weaken the spell. But the years turned into decades, and Sarah remained frozen, a silent testament to the sorcerer's cruelty. Rumors of the frozen widow spread throughout the land, whispered in hushed tones around campfires. Some said she was a princess cursed by a jealous queen. Others claimed she was a water spirit trapped by a wicked mage. The truth, however, remained hidden, locked away in the icy depths of Sarah's prison. She waited, unknowingly, for a lonely cowboy with a heart of gold to stumble upon her and perhaps, just perhaps, break the curse that held her captive. The magic that froze her was powerful, but so was the potential for love and compassion. Days turned into nights, and Jedediah kept vigil over Sarah. The ice was slowly melting, revealing more of her face, her hands, the delicate details of her dress. He talked to her, even though he knew she couldn't hear him. He told her about the ranch, about Patches, about the changing seasons. He even found himself talking about Alara, something he hadn't done in years. He described her smile, the way she used to hum while she baked bread, the sound of her laughter echoing through the house. He spoke of the pain of losing her, the emptiness that had filled his life ever since. "I never thought I'd feel anything again," he confessed to the silent, frozen figure. "My heart's been like this ice, cold and unyielding." He also told her stories about his childhood, growing up on a farm in Kansas, chasing fireflies on summer nights. He shared his dreams, his fears, his hopes for a future he thought he'd never have. He spoke of the loneliness that had become his constant companion, the feeling of being adrift in a world that had moved on without him. As he talked, Jedediah felt a strange weight lifting from his shoulders. Sharing his story, even with someone who couldn't respond, was cathartic. It was as if the frozen woman was absorbing his pain, offering him a silent form of solace. He didn't know if she would ever wake up, but he knew that tending to her was changing him. The ice around her might be melting, but so was the ice around his heart. Jedediah was telling Sarah about a time he'd gotten lost in the woods as a boy when he saw it. A flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch of her fingers. He stopped talking, his heart pounding in his chest. Had he imagined it? He leaned closer, his eyes fixed on her hand. He waited, holding his breath. Then it happened again. A slight tremor in her fingers, barely noticeable, but undeniable. Sarah was showing signs of life. A surge of hope flooded Jedediah, so powerful it almost knocked him off his feet. He hadn't dared to believe it was possible, but here it was, happening before his very eyes. The frozen woman was thawing, not just physically, but waking up. He reached out and gently took her hand in his. Her skin was still cold, but it felt different, more alive. He rubbed her hand, trying to warm it, willing her to wake up. "Sarah?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" He didn't expect an answer, but he continued to hold her hand, his gaze fixed on her face. He watched as her eyelids fluttered slightly, her brow furrowed, as if she was struggling to emerge from a deep sleep. The twitch in her fingers became more pronounced, her hand clenching slightly around his. Jedediah felt a tear roll down his cheek. He was witnessing a miracle. The frozen widow was returning to life, and he was there to see it. He had to remain calm, to be ready for whatever came next. But inside, his heart was soaring. Slowly, painstakingly, Sarah's eyes opened. They were a deep, mesmerizing blue, but filled with confusion. She blinked, her gaze unfocused, as if she was seeing the world for the first time. Jedediah held his breath, waiting for her to speak, to say something, anything. Where am I?" she finally whispered, her voice raspy and weak. Jedediah's heart leaped with joy, but he also noticed the disorientation in her eyes. "You're safe," he said gently. "You're on my ranch." She looked around the barn, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Ranch? What's a ranch?" Jedediah realized with a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Do you remember your name?" he asked cautiously. Sarah hesitated, her eyes searching her mind for an answer. She shook her head slowly, a look of distress crossing her face. I don't know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't remember anything." Amnesia. The realization hit Jedediah hard. She was awake, alive, but she had no memory of her past, of who she was, of how she had ended up frozen in ice. His hope was tempered by a new wave of concern. He had brought her back to life, but he had also brought her back to a world she didn't recognize, with no memories to guide her. He would have to help her, to guide her, to teach her everything she had forgotten. It was a daunting task, but he was ready. He had saved her life, and he wouldn't abandon her now. Jedediah took on the role of teacher with patience and kindness. Sarah was like a child, learning everything from scratch. He showed her how to walk, holding her hand as she took tentative steps across the barn floor. He taught her how to speak, repeating simple words and encouraging her to mimic him. "Horse," he'd say, pointing to patches. "Agaoehiesie." Sarah would struggle to form the sounds, her brow furrowed in concentration. But slowly, she began to learn, her voice growing stronger and more confident each day. He explained what a ranch was, showing her the cows, the chickens, the fields of hay. He taught her how to milk a cow, how to gather eggs, how to tend to the garden. She was fascinated by everything, her eyes wide with wonder. As Sarah learned, Jedediah found himself rediscovering the world through her eyes. He saw the beauty in the simplest things, the warmth of the sun, the scent of the earth, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. He made sure she was warm and comfortable, giving her Alara's old clothes. They were a bit big, but Sarah didn't mind. He told her stories about Alara, careful to keep them light and happy. In the process of teaching Sarah, Jedediah found himself growing closer to her. They shared meals, worked side by side, and talked for hours. A bond formed between them, a connection built on trust and compassion. He was no longer just her caretaker. He was her friend, her guide, her protector, and she, unknowingly, was becoming his. The ice around his heart was melting more and more each day, replaced by a warmth he hadn't felt in years. As Sarah grew stronger, She began to show signs of affection towards Jedediah. She would smile when he entered the room, her eyes sparkling with warmth. She loved listening to his stories, especially the ones about Alara. She'd often ask him to tell them again, her face etched with a mixture of sadness and fascination. She started helping him around the ranch, not just because she needed to learn, but because she wanted to. She'd fetch him tools, help him feed the animals, and even try her hand at mending fences, although that usually ended in laughter. During the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Jedediah reading aloud from old books he found in the attic. Sarah would lean against him, her head resting on his shoulder, content to just listen to the sound of his voice. One day, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Sarah reached out and took Jedediah's hand. Her touch was gentle but firm. He looked at her, surprised. "Thank you, Jedediah," she said softly, "for everything, for saving me, for teaching me, for being my friend." Jedediah's heart swelled with emotion. He squeezed her hand gently. "You're welcome, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm just glad you're here." He realized that Sarah wasn't just thawing his frozen heart. She was filling it with a new kind of warmth, a warmth he thought he'd never experience again. He was falling in love with her kindness, her curiosity, her resilience. And he suspected, hoped, that she was falling in love with him too. Their peaceful existence was shattered one afternoon while Sarah was helping Jedediah in the garden. She suddenly stopped, clutching her head, a look of intense pain contorting her face. "Sarah? What's wrong?" Jedediah asked, rushing to her side. "Images," she gasped, her voice strained. "I'm seeing images." They were fleeting, fragmented visions, snippets of a life she couldn't quite grasp. A cozy cottage, a mountain village, a man with kind eyes and skilled hands carving wood. Then, darkness, a swirling vortex of fear and pain. The flashes came and went, leaving Sarah disoriented and terrified. She didn't understand what they meant, but they filled her with a sense of dread. "It's okay," Jedediah said, holding her close. "Just breathe. It's just a dream." But Sarah knew it wasn't just a dream. It was something more, something connected to her past, a past she couldn't remember. The flashes became more frequent, more vivid, each one leaving her more shaken than the last. She started having nightmares, waking up screaming in the middle of the night. She would cling to Jedediah, her body trembling, begging him to make the visions stop. The amnesia, once a blank slate, was now a fractured mirror, reflecting distorted images of a life she couldn't claim. The peace they had found was threatened, replaced by a growing unease. Jedediah worried that the returning memories would overwhelm her, that she would lose herself in the confusion. He needed to find a way to help her make sense of her past, before it destroyed the present they were building together. Night after night, Jedediah held Sarah close, whispering words of comfort and reassurance. He knew he couldn't erase her past, but he could help her face it, one fragment at a time. "It's okay, Sarah," he'd say, stroking her hair. "Whatever you remember, whatever happened before, it doesn't change anything. You're safe here with me." He told her that her past didn't define her, that she was free to choose who she wanted to be. He assured her that he loved her, not for who she was before, but for who she was now, for the kind, gentle, and resilient woman she had become. "I don't care what your memories reveal," he confessed, his voice filled with emotion. "I love you, Sarah, just you, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." He encouraged her to talk about the flashes, to describe what she saw and felt. He listened patiently, offering support and understanding. He reminded her that she wasn't alone, that he was there to help her make sense of it all. He started researching amnesia, reading every book he could find on the subject. He learned that memories could be triggered by certain sights, sounds, or smells. He tried to create a calm and supportive environment, hoping to minimize her distress. Slowly, Sarah began to trust him, to rely on his strength and compassion. She knew that whatever her past held, she could face it with Jedediah by her side. His love was a beacon of hope, guiding her through the darkness, reminding her that even in the face of uncertainty, She was safe and loved. The nightmares still came, but they were less frequent, less intense. And each morning, she woke up knowing that Jedediah would be there, ready to face the day with her. Jedediah's newfound happiness didn't go unnoticed. Caleb, a rival cowboy who had always envied Jedediah's land and resented his solitary nature, saw an opportunity to stir up trouble. He couldn't stand to see Jedediah happy, especially with a woman like Sarah by his side. Caleb had heard the whispers about the frozen woman, but he dismissed them as tall tales. When he saw Sarah in town, he realized the stories were true, and he saw a way to exploit her amnesia to his advantage. He started spreading rumors, claiming that Sarah was a runaway bride with a dark past, that she was dangerous and unstable. He even tried to convince the townsfolk that Jedediah was keeping her prisoner. Then he began approaching Sarah directly, weaving a web of lies and half-truths. He told her that he knew her, that they had been friends long ago, that Jedediah was hiding something from her. "He's not who you think he is," Caleb would whisper, his voice oily and manipulative. "He's just using you. You belong with me, Sarah. I can help you remember." Sarah, still struggling with her memories, was confused and vulnerable. Caleb's words planted seeds of doubt in her mind, eroding the trust she had placed in Jedediah. She started questioning everything, wondering if Caleb was telling the truth, if Jedediah was hiding something from her. Caleb's jealousy and manipulation threatened to destroy the fragile happiness that Jedediah and Sarah had found, casting a shadow over their blossoming love. Jedediah noticed the change in Sarah. She was quieter, more withdrawn, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. He knew Caleb was behind it. He couldn't let Caleb's lies destroy what they had built. He found Caleb at the saloon, nursing a whiskey, a smug look on his face. Jedediah, his jaw tight with anger, approached him. "Stay away from Sarah," Jedediah said, his voice low and dangerous. Caleb smirked. "Or what, Jedediah? Gonna cry about it? She deserves to know the truth about you." "The only truth she needs to know is that I love her," Jedediah retorted. "And you're nothing but a jealous snake trying to slither your way into her life." Caleb stood up, his eyes narrowing. "She doesn't belong with a lonely old codger like you. She needs someone who can give her what she wants, someone who knows her past." "Her past doesn't matter," Jedediah said, his voice rising. "What matters is the present, and the future we're building together. And you're not going to ruin that." A crowd gathered, sensing the tension. Jedediah had always been a peaceful man, but Caleb had pushed him too far. "She's confused, Jedediah," Caleb sneered. "She doesn't even know who she is. You're taking advantage of her." "I'm giving her a home, a family, something she's never had," Jedediah said, his eyes blazing. "And I'll protect her with my life." He grabbed Caleb by the collar, his grip tightening. "Stay away from her, Caleb, or you'll regret it." He shoved Caleb back, turning and walking away, leaving Caleb sputtering with rage. He knew this wasn't over, but he had made his point. Sarah was his, and he would defend her honor and their love at all costs. Sarah had followed Jedediah to town, her heart heavy with doubt and confusion. She saw the confrontation with Caleb, heard their heated words. As Jedediah defended her, something shifted inside her. The fragmented memories coalesced, forming a clear picture of her past. She remembered Thomas, her beloved husband, the gentle woodcarver. She remembered the mountain village, the cozy cottage filled with love and laughter. And then, she remembered the sorcerer, his face contorted with envy, his voice dripping with malice. The curse. She remembered the chilling words, the feeling of her body turning to ice, the darkness that consumed her. She remembered the villagers' desperate attempts to save her, their sorrowful faces as they placed her by the creek. It all came flooding back, overwhelming her senses. She gasped, her knees buckling beneath her. Jedediah rushed to her side, his face etched with concern. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice filled with worry. She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I remember," she whispered, her voice trembling. I remember everything. She told him about Thomas, about the curse, about the sorcerer. She told him about her frozen prison, about the years that had passed, about the miracle that had brought her back to life. Caleb, witnessing Sarah's sudden revelation, realized his scheme had backfired. He had hoped to exploit her amnesia, but instead, he had triggered the return of her memories, revealing his own cruelty and Jedediah's unwavering love. The townsfolk, hearing Sarah's story, turned on Caleb, their faces filled with disgust. His lies had been exposed, his reputation ruined. He was alone, defeated. Caleb, humiliated and enraged, wasn't ready to give up. He lunged at Jedediah, intending to settle the score with his fists. But Sarah, remembering her past life and the magic that permeated her village, instinctively reacted. A surge of energy coursed through her veins, a power she hadn't known she possessed. She raised her hand, and a shimmering shield of ice materialized in front of Jedediah, deflecting Caleb's attack. The townsfolk gasped, witnessing Sarah's unexpected display of magic. Caleb stumbled back, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. He had underestimated Sarah, mistaking her amnesia for weakness. Stay away from him, Sarah declared, her voice strong and resolute. I remember everything, including the magic that protects those I love. She didn't know the full extent of her powers, but she knew she could defend Jedediah. She focused her energy, and the ground around Caleb began to freeze, trapping his feet in a layer of ice. He struggled to break free, but the ice held him fast. Sarah stood tall, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. You tried to hurt him, to deceive me, she said, her voice filled with scorn. But you failed. Our love is stronger than any lie, any curse. She released Caleb from the ice, but the fear in his eyes remained. He knew he was no match for Sarah's newfound powers, and he knew he had lost. He turned and fled, disappearing into the crowd, his reputation shattered, his dreams of vengeance crushed. Sarah had defended Jedediah, not just with her words, but with her magic, solidifying their bond and silencing their rival. With Caleb defeated and his lies exposed, the townsfolk rallied around Jedediah and Sarah, offering their support and admiration. But for Jedediah and Sarah, the most important thing was each other. Jedediah took Sarah back to the ranch, away from the prying eyes of the town. He held her close, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. I was so scared, Sarah confessed, her voice trembling. I didn't know who to trust, what to believe. I know, Jedediah said, stroking her hair. But it's over now. You're safe, and I'll always protect you. I remember everything now, Sarah said, her eyes filling with tears. Thomas, the village, the curse, it was all so real. I know it was, Jedediah said gently. But you're not that person anymore. You're Sarah, the woman I love. And we have a future together, a future filled with happiness and love. He knelt down, taking her hands in his. Sarah, he said, his voice filled with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? My partner? My everything? Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears of joy. Yes, Jedediah, she said, her voice filled with love. Yes, I will. They embraced, their hearts beating as one. They had faced adversity, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger than ever. Their love had been tested, but it had proven to be unbreakable. They were ready to face the future together, hand in hand, knowing that their love could conquer anything. The lonely cowboy had finally found his soulmate, and the frozen widow had finally found her home. Sarah considered returning to her village to see if anyone remembered her, to learn more about her past. But the thought of leaving Jedediah was unbearable. She realized that her home wasn't a place, but a person. I want to stay here, with you, she told Jedediah, her eyes shining with sincerity. This ranch, this is my home now. Jedediah smiled, his heart filled with happiness. Then this is where we'll stay, he said, squeezing her hand. We'll build a life together, a life filled with love and laughter. They began planning their wedding, a small, intimate ceremony with only their closest friends and neighbors. Sarah incorporated elements of her past into the celebration, weaving flowers into her hair and singing songs from her village. They transformed the ranch house into a warm and welcoming home, filling it with love and laughter. Sarah decorated the walls with wood carvings, inspired by Thomas's artistry. They planted a garden, filled with colorful flowers and fragrant herbs. Jedediah taught Sarah how to ride a horse, and they would often go on long rides together, exploring the vast landscape, their hearts filled with joy. Sarah, in turn, used her magic to help the ranch thrive, ensuring that the crops were plentiful and the animals were healthy. The ranch, once a symbol of Jedediah's loneliness, became a sanctuary of love and happiness. The frozen river in his heart had finally thawed, replaced by a warm, flowing stream of affection and companionship. They were no longer alone, no longer haunted by the ghosts of the past. They had found each other, and together, they had created a home, a family, a love that would last a lifetime. The story of Jedediah and Sarah became a legend in Dust Devil Gulch, a testament to the power of love and compassion. It was a reminder that even the coldest hearts can be thawed, that even the most frozen souls can find warmth and happiness. Jedediah, once a lonely cowboy haunted by grief, had found love again, a love that was stronger than any curse, any memory, any obstacle. Sarah, once a frozen widow trapped in the past, had found a new life, a new home, a new love that embraced her for who she was, both past and present. Their story showed that even in the darkest of times, hope can emerge, that even in the most desolate of landscapes, love can bloom. It demonstrated that kindness and empathy can break down barriers, heal wounds, and bring people together. It was a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance, that everyone is capable of love and happiness, regardless of their past. And it was a celebration of the human spirit, its ability to overcome adversity, to find joy in the face of sorrow, and to create beauty in the midst of chaos. The tale of the lonely cowboy and the frozen widow was a beacon of light, illuminating the path towards a brighter future, a future where love and compassion reigned supreme. It proved that even the most frozen heart can melt, that even the longest winter can give way to spring, and that even the loneliest soul can find its way home, all thanks to the transformative power of love. The end.